The United States government spent approximately $20 million over 2 decades studying whether human beings could move objects with their minds. Not in secret, not unofficially. As a formally funded intelligence program run by trained researchers, reviewed by oversight committees, and eventually declassified through official government channels. The program did not conclude that telekinesis was definitively real. It also did not conclude that it was definitively impossible. What it concluded was that the practical intelligence value was limited. And then it closed. That gap between what was studied, what was found, and what was concluded is the most interesting part of the story, not because it proves anything, but because of what it reveals about where the limits of scientific certainty actually sit. Here's what they didn't tell you about government psychic research. The story begins in the early 1970s, at a moment when the Cold War competition between the United States and the Soviet Union had extended far beyond missiles and satellites. Intelligence reports reaching the CIA suggested that the Soviet Union was investing significant resources in research into psychic phenomena, what the Soviets called psychotronics. The specific concern was that if psychic capabilities were real, even partially, a geopolitical adversary developing them while the United States ignored them would represent a strategic vulnerability. That concern, whether it was well-founded or not, produced a decision. The CIA and later other government agencies began funding research into whether human consciousness could access or influence information and physical systems beyond the limits of ordinary sensory capability. The umbrella of this research included remote viewing, the alleged ability to perceive distant locations or information without physical access, and psychokinesis, the alleged ability to influence physical systems with the mind alone. Pause for a second. The programs that resulted were not conducted in the margins of the intelligence community. They involved credentialed scientists, ran at established research institutions, and were reviewed at multiple levels of government oversight. The most prominent was eventually consolidated under the name Project Stargate, which operated from the early 1970s through 1995 and was managed at various points by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Project Stargate was real. That is a documented fact, not a claim. The program files were declassified and are available through the CIA's public reading room. The research was conducted, the results were collected, and the debate about what those results actually showed is genuinely unresolved. If something is considered impossible, why spend years trying to prove it? That question is worth sitting with because the answer has 2 parts, and they point in different directions. The first part is strategic. During the Cold War, the United States government was not in the business of assuming things were impossible simply because they contradicted known science. If the adversary was investing in something, the calculus was to investigate rather than dismiss. That is a reasonable intelligence posture. It does not require believing the thing is real. It requires not being certain it is not. The second part is more interesting. The research was not started purely defensively. Some of the people involved in designing and running these programs believed, based on preliminary evidence they had encountered, that there was something worth investigating. Not proof, but anomalous results in laboratory settings that did not have clean conventional explanations. The decision to fund the research was, at least in part, a decision that the question was open enough to be worth asking seriously. And this is where it gets interesting. The psychokinesis